In Yalta, or is the United States begging the Soviet Union? A few months later, the Borstein situation was rewritten because this time the United States has a secret weapon dare to have a showdown with Stalin 3 weeks later. The weapon's first and only appearance turned into a mushroom cloud over the two cities. The 45-year standoff between the superpowers. The clock starts this summer. See the world through a Cold War. See today clearly. Welcome to Cold War City. I am Governor Yang Guo. The last season was in 1945. Three elderly people just finished dividing the map in Yalta. A skinny man made eggs in the desert this season. America is carrying this egg. Walk to Borstein's poker table. Today is Cold War Season 2. Bostan to Hiroshima. From one telegram to two ruins. Undead Berlin. The lucky president of Germany. Borstein. A few dozen kilometers from Berlin. The big three chose the venue at the Sicherin and the Halvra. This used to be the villa of the Prussian royal family. Noble articles carved in stone above the head. It's scorched earth. It was the same three men, Stalin of the Soviet Union, Churchill in England, Truman of America. The people thought they were here to celebrate the victory. Actually, this is the last time they will share the table as allies. It is also the first time to straighten the knife, connect the top to the other party's waist. Of the three, Truman is the worst. 3 months ago, he is still accompany the vice president whose core secrets cannot be touched. As soon as Roosevelt died, power fell into his arms like a hot potato. He was in the clothing business in his early years, later into politics, mainly stable in the eyes of old foxes like Stalin and Sister Cho. The new president of the United States, just a lucky hillbilly. Stalin escorted 2 infantry divisions every kilometer along the train route. There were soldiers with guns. His goal is simple: to eat the meat in his belly, not vomiting at all. Eastern Europe was already dominated by the Red Army. Poland, Romania, Bulgaria has to follow Moscow from now on. Churchill was like a housekeeper in a broken house. Britain is in debt, living on US loans, but he could see very clearly the German knife. The next hegemon in Europe is the Soviet Union. He has to hold America back. Block Stalin east of a North River. Borstein on the ledger. This meeting is not romantic at all. No champagne, only wrangling. The first focus is on the Polish border. Stalin wanted to push the Soviet Union's borders westward as compensation. Take a large piece of land in eastern Germany forcibly assigned to Poland. Churchill slapped the table on the spot. Say, you put this cat in Poland, stuffed into the belly of this dog in Germany. Sooner or later, stomach perforation will occur. Stalin smoked his pipe without lifting his eyelids. The Soviet Union won this battle. 27 million people died. Every inch of land has been washed with the blood of the Red Army. Want me to give in exchange for human life? It's all about money, land and population. Germany had a population of nearly 70 million at the time. Industrial areas are concentrated in the Ruhr area to the west. The capital of the Soviet station is mainly farmland and bombed to rubble. Berlin, the Soviet Union was completely destroyed. Hundreds of cities waiting to be rebuilt. He has no money, so he can only take it. Stalin's direct offer. Germany pays the Soviet Union $10 billion. This number, it is equivalent to more than 10 years in Germany at that time. All products without eating or drinking. Truman and yokai don't do it. If the Ruhr factory is emptied, tens of millions of Germans in the West have to rely on beautiful babies' relief food. The two sides quarreled for 5 days. Reach a ridiculous arrangement. Separate. There is idle equipment in the West side. 15% to the Soviet Union, then use the Eastern grain wood to exchange. This is the principle of zoning compensation. It took him a few minutes to sign, and it took all of Europe 45 years. Germany is no longer a complete country. It is on the ledger. It was cut in half right here in Potsdam for this 10 billion. Quarrelsome July 1945. The rest of the world is turning pages at the same time. San Francisco. 50 countries just signed the UN Charter at the end of June. That table of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council. It was at the last Yalta conference that built up American casualties, and the Pacific continue to rise. We are waiting for the end of this world war. It's just that no one thought the end will come in the form of 2 mushroom clouds. A telegram. The waste is hard. It really makes this game stale. It was a telegram from across the ocean the day before the opening on July 16. A fireball erupts in the desert of New Mexico. The first atomic bomb is successfully detonated. That was the last episode. Oppenheimer watched the fireball rise. Read the morning I became the Grim Reaper. The telegram was delivered to Truman. Above is a line of code words. Baby was born smoothly. Truman with the telegram. The waste pole stood up on the spot. The Churchill conference said he had changed completely. Start reprimanding on the table. Stalin presided over the entire conference. The reason is not complicated. Before that, the United States sent troops to fight the Japanese Guangdong army in order to attract the Soviet Union. Let in Yalta. Now Truman thinks he no longer needed the Soviet Union to go to the northeast. You can even use this baby. Force out the meat that Stalin swallowed in Eastern Europe. When the meeting ended on July 24, he went to Stalin's side on purpose. Say it in a very flat tone. We are now. There is a new weapon of great destructive power. He stared fixedly into his face. I want to see a hint of panic. The stenographer next to him was holding his breath. Stalin didn't even shake his eyebrows. Just a nod. That's great. I hope you use it well against Japan. Truman was stunned on the spot. I thought the other party didn't understand. It took years for the Soviet archives to be declassified before the truth came to light. Stalin already knew spies infiltrated the Manhattan Project a few months before the core event. Drawings and data are on his desk. As soon as he got back to the villa, he called Curciator. Scared to death. Order to speed up the money. We also need to make our own baby. That night, Borstein was calm on the surface. The underground balance collapsed. The Allies' coat was burned through by the fire, exposed two hegemonic stock prices. The meeting went wrong on the 17th day. UK general election announced. Churchill loses, sent down by voters in exchange for a blurry-faced Adri. Old age of empires. It's all scattered in this hall. The meeting is still open, but whether the egg is thrown or not can't hide. That decision fell to Truman alone. Looking back at his journey, what do you think? Doesn't look like someone who can sit in that chair. When he was young, he owned a small shop selling men's clothing. In time for the economic downturn, the electricity went down. Paid off for many years later. He was supported by the political machine in his hometown from place to place to table. Be honest, be willing to do it, but in the eyes of the elites in Washington he has no background. Honest Midwestern guy with little education. 1944 Roosevelt picked his deputy and the relatively uncontroversial him. The vice president was more of a decoration back then. The default was that the sky was falling and Roosevelt was standing there. He served as vice president for 82 days. The number of times I met with Roosevelt alone count on one hand. Roosevelt is outside with Stalin. Churchill divided the world's major events. Hardly any enemies with this deputy. So the day of succession, many of his secrets from the highest levels of the country. Black eyes. The biggest secret hit him on the head the night he accepted the presidency. The Secretary of the Army quietly revealed the United States is building an unimaginably powerful bomb. Almost there. He had this exercise on his desk. According to the current method of play, one island at a time and finally land on Japanese soil. Hit it inch by inch. It could take a year or more. Soldiers from both sides plus a large number of Japanese civilians. Casualties would be unimaginable. Were these numbers later inflated? Is Japan running out of steam? The historians are still arguing today, but at that time, the Allies issued an announcement to Japan asking him to surrender unconditionally or face swift and complete destruction. Japan's response was interpreted as a rejection. The most honest-looking president made a decision in my heart. 2 mornings. The world has changed. The order was issued in early August. Early morning of August 6, AB-29 named Enola Gay flew to Hiroshima. Inside the magazine is a traveling bullet, code name Little Boy. Around 8:15. Local time detonated about 600 meters above the city. A light and a dream. The entire city center was flattened. 3 days later, on August 9, the second bomber, Boxka, carried cloth bombs. Fat Man dispatched, originally scheduled to fry Kokura, but that day, Kokura had a lot of smoke behind the clouds. I can't find the head pop-up window, and the oil is not enough. Had to turn to the alternate target Nagasaki while Yunfeng threw the egg. The city of Kokura, because of the clouds that day, dodged a bullet. Tens of thousands died on the spot in both cities due to injuries and radiation. It's still adding up year by year. The horrors of that moment in the city memorials and history books are remembered. Before that, no matter how big the battle is, it will take thousands of lives inch by inch to fill in. It takes years for a country to be crushed, but after those 2 mornings, one plane, one bomb. A city is gone. On August 8, the Soviet Union declared war on Japan. 1.50 million army crossed the northeastern border of China all the way to the northern part of the Korean peninsula. On the 15th, Japan surrendered. The world is finally waiting for victory in the anti-Japanese war, the beginning of the nuclear age and the end of the old wars squeezed on the same page. In 1945 Truman pressed this ended an old war. It also opened the door to a new era, the Soviet Union on the other side of the world. Looked at that fire. Make up your mind that I must also have. 4 years later, he had his own atomic bomb. So a whole new situation emerges when the two strongest countries, they both have weapons that can destroy each other, holding back hostility, but no one dares to do it first. If you start first, it's probably a piece of cake. I can't afford. These 3 words became more than 40 years later a thread hanging over the heads of two superpowers. I said in my continuation, the Cold War was a world war in which no guns were fired. The reason why the gun was never fired buried in this summer's decisions. Not good nature. The price is too high for anyone to pay. The next episode previews 2 eggs falling. World War II is over. All mankind is partying. I thought peace had finally come. Behind the peace, Germany is divided in two. A line has been drawn on the Korean peninsula. The two most powerful countries, one clutching $1 and an atomic bomb, one holds tens of thousands of tanks. They all feel that what they hold in their hands is the right way in the world. The gun hasn't fired yet. The first to tear the face is the mouth. Within a year, a diplomat write a 5,000-word telegram in Moscow. An unsuccessful old man in a small town in America shout out the word ironwood. Speaking of which temporary allies become complete adversaries, the next episode of 1946 cracks an egg. A telegram. Friends become rivals. The Cold War is conceived and September is about to be born. Remember to pay attention to the Cold War envoy. Let's finish these 45 years together. Remember to like and follow.